Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. I am your host, Rebecca, and I recap live trials so you have something to listen to while you're creating those masterpieces out there. Crochet, yarn, whatever it is you do. Painting, you can do it while you listen to me. Today I'm going to update you on the Michelle Troconis case. Now, Michelle Troconis, this case is in its fourth week, and been going on behind the scenes of the Montgomery case, of course, which the jury is now deliberating in that case, and I will go live when they have a verdict. They're about 3 hours into that case deliberation. So Michelle Troconis is charged with conspiracy to commit the murder of Jennifer Dulos. Now, Jennifer Dulos was Michelle's boyfriend, Fotis Dulos' ex-wife. Michelle was living with Fotis Dulos in what used to be the family home for Jefferson Crossing in Farmington, Connecticut. Now, at the time that Jennifer Dulos, Fotis Dulos' ex-wife, disappeared, she was living with their 5 kids in New Canaan, Connecticut, which is a few hours away from Farmington. She is last seen Friday morning, May 24th of 2019, when she drops off her children at their school and she goes to New York. The plan was she was going to go to New York, go to these doctor's appointments that she had, and then the nanny was going to pick up the children. They only had half a day that day. She picked them up, brought them home, gave them Subway for lunch, and then she drove 4 of the 5 children to New York City to Gloria's house. Gloria was Jennifer Dulos' mother. The plan was the 5th child was going to have a sleepover back in New Canaan. The 4 children had appointments at the orthodontist, and Jennifer Dulos was going to, after her doctor's appointments, meet the nanny and the kids at her mother's home in New York City. She never shows up. So when she doesn't show up, the nanny goes ahead and she takes the 4 kids to the orthodontist, and then she starts making phone calls. Because where's Jennifer? Nobody can, she's not answering her texts, she's not answering her phone, and nobody has seen her. She is never seen again. And she is presumed dead. Now, we know through the evidence that has been presented thus far that there was some very, very bloody clothing dropped into the trash by Fotis Dulos, the former husband, and Michelle Troconis was in the truck when he was driving around Hartford, Connecticut, dropping off all this trash that included this bloody clothing. That did come back to, the DNA on the clothing came back to be Jennifer Dulos' blood. Now, the prosecution's theory of this case is that on the morning of the 24th, Fotis' employee, Pavel Guamani, had he had been driving Fotis' vehicle all week, the black Ford Raptor. So Fotis was driving the employee's Toyota Tacoma. So he put his bicycle in that Toyota Tacoma on the morning of the 24th, drives to New Canaan. When he gets to New Canaan, he goes to this park, parks his Toyota Tacoma there, gets on the bicycle, goes to Jennifer Dulos' home, murders her, goes back to the park while he drives her Chevy Suburban back to the park and leaves the Chevy Suburban in the park and takes the Tacoma and returns home. I know. And there was a lot of vehicles going back and forth and here and there and everywhere the afternoon of the 24th, including the Toyota Tacoma, the Chevy Suburban. See, both of them own Chevy Suburbans. Jennifer Dulos had a Chevy Suburban that was found that afternoon in the park where it's presumed that Fotis Dulos left it. Fotis had a Chevy Suburban, and that was parked at Fort Jefferson that afternoon. He also had the black Ford Raptor. So that afternoon, his employee, Pavel, comes with the black Ford Raptor and they exchange vehicles. He picks up his Toyota Tacoma. Fotis gets his black Ford Raptor, and it's the black Ford Raptor that he drives around Hartford with, dropping off the trash. Also seen is Fotis has a Jeep Cherokee, and Michelle Troconis was driving that Jeep Cherokee that day. Now, in her first 2 police interviews, she had a total of 3 interviews. Now, the 3rd interview was played last Friday, and this past Monday, we heard the 3rd interview. And in this 3rd interview, her story's changing yet again. Her story started out that she took a shower with Fotis that morning, so she spent some time with him that morning. Then, oh no, she didn't. She woke up and he was there, and she went on about her day. And then in the 3rd interview, she admits she never saw him that morning. She didn't see him. She also admits that there was a phone call that she answered in his office, and this was the phone call from that Fotis set up ahead of time. He had called his friend in Greece the night before and said, "Call me tomorrow morning." She answered that phone. Now, what else did her third, they were really pressuring her during this 3rd interview. She talked about, they asked her about the Toyota Tacoma. Why did you have the keys to the Toyota Tacoma? She goes, well, this is such a long story. So during this exchange of vehicles, that when Pavel came to get his Tacoma that Friday afternoon, the Tacoma was at the 80 Mountain View property that had just been built by Fotis, and they were getting it ready for an open house. So, she was over there, Michelle was over there cleaning it for the open house. And it's Pavel's testimony that she never cleaned anything. So that she had never done this before on any of their properties. So he goes over to this 80 Mountain. When he sees his vehicle's not at Fort Jefferson where it should be, he drives the Raptor over to 80 Mountain, and there is the Tacoma. So during this 3rd interview, she's asked, well, why were you so surprised to see your employee that day? Because his testimony was when he gets there, they were very surprised to see him. So she says, well, because we had the passenger door open of the Tacoma, and basically they were getting ready to have sex on the door. And so the police showed her a picture of this blood spot that they had found, or a spot that they had found on the door of this Toyota Tacoma. And they told her, this tested positive for blood, and is that what turns on Fotis? Just really inappropriate comments by the police, but they were doing it to get a rise out of her. They were doing it on purpose. They wanted to get an emotional reaction out of her. In fact, here's what the officer said. So does Jennifer's blood make Fotis horny? My jaw dropped when he said that. Like, oh my. And it did get a rise out of her. Yeah, she didn't take too kindly to that comment. Yeah. So in any case, she was also asked about the keys, because Pavel's testimony was when he went to pick up his Toyota Tacoma at 80 Mountain Spring, the keys, he had seen the keys to the Tacoma in the door of the Tacoma, and he left them there because he knew he was coming right back. They had to drive back to Fort Jefferson and then come back to the 80 Mountain, in all this exchange of vehicles. So when he comes back, the keys are gone. So Fotis has to call Michelle to come back and bring the keys. So she was asked during her 3rd interview, why do you have the keys? And she said, well, because I was the last one there. So I saw the keys, I took the keys, which makes perfect sense. So there were a lot of trips back and forth. The prosecution had called several neighbors during the testimony. And the neighbors would talk about where their cameras were and what the angles you could see on the cameras. So we finally get the relevance of all this testimony. And the police come in and they show this surveillance. And what you see on this surveillance is that at the time that Jennifer says she was having lunch with Fotis, you see that she is going back and forth in this Jeep Cherokee over to the 80 Mountain Spring property and then back to Fort Jefferson, then back, all day long. These vehicles are going back and forth. And each time she goes back there, uh, they pulled some surveillance that shows just the house. And they happen to notice on their surveillance that there is smoke rising out of the chimney of this house. Now, this is May. Why do you have Nobody has a fireplace going in May, I would think, in Connecticut. Now, during her third interview, she's asked about the smoke coming out of her house. And she says, "Oh, I was burning wood. I do that all the time. And you leave the house, you start to burn wood, and then you leave. Yeah, I don't worry about it." Okay, so more evidence that she's a little bit more involved than we thought she was. The evidence has really been so benign up until now with respect to her involvement, but the fact that she lied about what she was doing that day several times, and now we see that the vehicle she said she was driving, the Jeep, is going back and forth between Fort Jefferson and 80 Mountain Spring several times that day is a little suspect. She said the other thing she said in the interview was that she last saw the bicycle that he was on. Last time she saw that bicycle, it was in the garage at that 80 Mountain Spring property. Interesting. Okay. So one of the other things that had happened in the trial last week was there was one point when the judge was notified, probably through his office, but someone notified the office of the judge and therefore the judge that Michelle Jaconis has a laptop in front of her. It's not the attorney's laptop, it's her laptop, apparently. She had a laptop open, and I'll show you a picture here. Everybody could see it. Everybody in the pews could see this laptop. And apparently it was the custody report that she's not supposed to have. Nobody's supposed to have this. It's sealed. No one is supposed to know the contents of this custody report. So that's what was reported to the judge, that she had this open and everybody could see it. The cameras, now they blurred it when they showed it, thank goodness. But so he said, this was late in the day. He's like, I've been notified this. And he was also notified that Jennifer's family was mouthing things to the jury. And then there was also, Jennifer Dulas's family. And then there was also her family that were mouthing things to her. So he said, we'll talk about this tomorrow. So he comes in the next day, and what he says is, with respect to the laptop issue, that they were going to have a contempt of court hearing. She's no longer allowed to have her laptop there. And once both sides rest their case, he's going to have a contempt of court hearing. Now, her attorney said, "Listen, I've never given her this custody report. She shouldn't have it. She didn't get it from me." But I have no idea what she had up on the screen because I was in the middle of my cross-examination. So he has recommended to her that she get a different attorney for the contempt of court hearing that's supposed to occur. Now, the judge told the jury, because of this contempt of court hearing that he has to have, well, he didn't tell them what it was, but he said because of things that have come up, this case is going to last into March, because now the prosecution has rested their case, the defense is putting on their case, and they intend to call some experts. Those testimony is always pretty lengthy. One of their experts is a linguistics expert, and he's expected to testify about, because English is not her first language. Michelle's first language, Spanish, is her first language, and he's expected to testify about stress and how that affects your language, and to account for all these versions of her that she gives of her day on the 24th during each of these 3 interviews. So now she's got to go through a contempt of court hearing, and about this laptop issue. And the other thing the judge commented on was, he says, this is not a pep rally. We're, like in high school, and we're not going to have competing pep rallies here. So, knock off this conduct, basically. So I thought that was interesting. Competing pep rallies. Nope, he wasn't going to put up with it. So one of the witnesses that I observed was they put on Gloria, Jennifer Dulos' mother, Gloria Farber. Now, Jennifer's mother is 87 years old, and I'm telling you, she looks better than I do. She looks darn good for an 87-year-old woman living in New York City. She testified about how the plan was she was supposed to show up that day, and she didn't show up, and um, she wasn't on the stand very long, just kind of to give that testimony. Um, oh, and she now has custody of the 5 kids, but they're being raised by the nanny, basically. She's got custody, but she lives in New York City. The kids live in New Canaan with the nanny. That's it. So that case is, I'll keep checking in on that case. I'll try to keep you updated as this case progresses into March. And hopefully the Rust case will start today, and we'll get into that a little bit. Have a great day, everybody, and hopefully I'll see you for a verdict later today. Take care.